Welcome back. Vodacom is not budging on the payment to Please Call Me inventor Nkosana Makate. Today, hundreds of supporters of the Please Call Me campaign joined protests at the Vodacom headquarters in Midrand, demanding for Vodacom to pay Makate. Devan Murugan was there and joins me now. So, Devan, in the build-up, there was a lot of mobilizing on the part of the activists, including people such as Panyaza Lesufi and the Please Call Me movement, and also some responses that were coming from the side of Vodacom. So there was a bit of tension built up into this already. How did the protest play out, and do the organizers feel that it achieved its purpose?
That's an interesting question. So come 10 a.m. this morning, that was the deadline or the ultimatum that the Please Call Me campaign had given Vodacom to actually respond. What do they want? Well, they want what they call is a fair amount. The figure that was banded on all of these banners this morning was 70 billion rand. So I want to take you back to the Constitutional Court judgment in 2016. So here you have an inventor of the Please Call Me service. He went to court simply saying, well, I had a verbal discussion with the project development manager at Vodacom. That should be granted as a binding one. And the court did exactly that. They said that was binding. Further down on that judgment, it said that there was common cause that billions of rands was made as a result of the use of the service. And then right at the end, Tulis, it said if all else fails, and I'm summarizing here, not using the exact terms, but if all else fails, then the discretion would be left up to the CEO of Vodacom, the group CEO, to make a judgment that is fair and then make this offer to Makate. That didn't play out very well. We've seen for the past few weeks now, Kenneth Makate saying that amount is just laughable. He will not accept it. The campaigners go out there this morning, about 500 of them, trying to make the point for Vodacom to come out and talk to them. 10 a.m., that didn't happen.
And what have the leadership been saying, the leaders of this movement? What have they been saying about the further strategies to put pressure on Vodacom?
That's an interesting question because, you know, you ask yourself, what further legal maneuvering can they do? I would imagine, according to the commentary, very, very little. It's all about really stepping up the campaign and getting that grassroots traction to support this Please Call Me inventor, because there's not much more they can do on the legal front. We have heard over the past few hours that Makate is taking this on judicial review. But a name you mentioned earlier, big names at this event, supporting the strategy, and the strategy is as follows. Get government to stop all or pull back all Vodacom contracts. They are targeting campaigns or sponsorship, rather, that Vodacom does. They want people not to attend these events, the July Handicap, for example, and get as many people as possible to just cancel their contracts. Panyaza Lesufi actually supporting that, and he called some of these corporate giants monsters. Let's take a listen.
The only thing that we must do is to show Vodacom and many other companies that will identify in the near future that South Africans are tired of police, that South Africans are capable of standing together and fight a monster. And there's no monster that is big enough for all of us in this particular country. And Vodacom will be an example that will show to everyone that where we stand, there is one thing, and one thing only, is to pay Makate.
Yeah. Did you spot Nkosana Makate anywhere in the crowd there? And I ask because, I mean, you did have an engagement with the Vodacom leadership through their head of legal.
No, not at all. And I also asked Vodacom whether or not they will sit down and speak to him. And, you know, what they tell me is the only process they will take forward is if they participate in the process of a judicial review. And that's an interesting one. I just want to go back to what I said earlier about the judgment saying that recognizes that billions of rands have been made, but then you leave it to one of the parties to decide how much the other party gets.
It is a bit of a difficult one, isn't it?
It's a difficult one, and I see some commentary saying that perhaps the Constitutional Court falling short. I mean, that's a strong statement to make. So there we are after the protests, walking into the Vodacom headquarter building, and we met the Chief Legal Regulatory Officer, Nkateko Nyoka, there, and he will not budge. We asked him whether or not that amount will change. By the way, that amount, you've seen some amounts on social media and some online news pages quoting amount of 49 million rand that was offered to Makate. That's not confirmed. We have no reason to believe that's true. But I asked him, is there any chance after this protest, and if this gains traction, of you moving on that amount? And again, he points to that Constitutional Court ruling. Let's take a listen.
From our perspective, the decision of the CEO as a deadlock-breaking mechanism is final and binding. Having said that, as I explained earlier, Mr. Makate is taking the group CEO's decision on judicial review. If that is the case, we'll participate in the process and make our case.
So between the 49 million rand that has been reportedly offered and the 70 billion rand, which is the figure being bandied about by Nkosana Makate's supporters as what's due to him, we actually don't know what is due here.
That's been the most confusing and perhaps frustrating part about this entire debacle. I mean, under a clause, both parties are not allowed to disclose how much was offered and how much was asked for. So you have these numbers floating around on banners and on online sites, but we really do not know. What we do know clearly is that the Please Call Me campaign and Makate himself thinks that whatever offer came through was a joke.
What about this MTN angle that has suddenly gained a bit of traction in the last few days, when actually we've had years and years of litigation, and this was, mentioned in passing? I mean, I read the Constitutional Court judgment. Only once does it mention MTN, also in passing.
Yes, indeed, and I put that question. It was out, in the open for discussion as well. Basically, what it says is that MTN actually came out with the Please Call Me service, perhaps in a different form, before Kenneth Makate actually brought this to the fore. But, I mean, that's shot down by the fact that we had a Constitutional Court case, and there were just two parties involved here, and we had a ruling. Many saying that the MTN angle on this thing is actually noise. It doesn't really matter because the two parties involved here sat in the Constitutional.
Yeah, absolutely, because the Vodacom argument as to whether or not Nkosana Makate invented this hinged on initially arguing that actually it was Alan Not Craig, who was the Vodacom CEO at the time, who actually came up with the idea. And as you see, that the MTN issue then comes up only once in the Concord judgment.
Yeah, it seems quite convenient, though, doesn't it? And one wonders, why wasn't MTN so aggressive in saying, well, this was actually our idea 20 years ago? When it did happen, I mean, I think that there were some applications for that service being patented. But really, we didn't see an aggressive call from MTN to claim that that is theirs. So that's confusing.
So what are Panyaza Lesufi and the Please Call Me movement saying they will do now? They've picketed. They've called for a boycott. Do they just leave it to South Africans to perhaps rally behind their cause, or do they have other actions planned?
Well, I suppose that traction or gaining traction amongst the public is their number one concern, a goal at the moment. We spoke earlier about the fact that we're not too sure how much legal maneuvering can be done here. What we do know on the other side of Makate, he is taking this on judicial review. How successful this will be, we don't really know now.
All right, thank you so much. ENCA's Devan Murugan, who's been tracking the protests that have been taking place outside Vodacom's headquarters, demanding that Vodacom pays Nkosana Makate for the Please Call Me idea. Let's shift focus